Thank you to those women who've organised this and all the other events that have preceded this. The first shock for me with this incredible moment we're in was when I learnt that rapists were being put in women's jails. What fresh hell is this, I thought. And it was just 5 minutes ago that we had the Me Too, hashtag Me Too, which, as you remember, was focused initially very much on relatively well-off women in Hollywood being exploited. But now we had very often disadvantaged, impoverished, often women who had been sexually assaulted, very often being put in, being held in jails in which they put males who were rapists. The absolute cruelty of this just blew me away. And I thought, how did this ideological straitjacket descend on people who regard themselves as progressive? The second shock came when I discovered that a male who was approaching 40 years of age entered the female weightlifting competition in the Pacific Games. This male called Laurel Hubbard competed against 18-year-old Samoan women, half his age. He came from a very wealthy white New Zealand family, and somehow this was acceptable. It was completely unacceptable, and very often the male athletes who are entering the female competition are older. They are, you know, at that point in their sporting life when they, vacate left field because they can't compete at the highest level in the male category. The next shock came when I learnt that young people, children and youth who most likely would grow up to be gay or lesbian were being caught up in the gender conveyor belt. These are young people. We have always known that children who most likely grow up to be gay or lesbian are gender non-conforming. Boys who like, things that are regarded as girly. Girls who like playing sport and being a tomboy and having short hair. These children were once they're on this conveyor belt, and people who are normally rational people look at these kids and go, oh, you like dressing up, you like girly things, must be in the wrong body. Let's change your body. How regressive is that? It's unbelievable. So these children are on this gender conveyor belt to the gender industry, which is now quite an industry now. There are a lot of people making money out of this. Now we see that young gay and lesbian adults are disproportionately represented amongst detransitioners with regret for the permanent changes to their bodies. And let's not forget that when children are put on puberty blockers, and that's followed by cross-sex hormones, they will be sterile. And very often they will have impaired or no sexual function, as well as all the other serious consequences of these extreme experimental, I don't even want to call them treatments because they're experimental interventions. The next shock for me came when I learnt that, and I am a lesbian, I learnt that we had been redefined by the rainbow orgs that once were meant to be protecting our rights and had done for many years. But now gay and lesbian people have been redefined. We were no longer allowed to say we were same-sex attracted, we were same-gender attracted.
Yeah.
Homosexual was no longer a thing, even because it's got the word sex in the middle of it, so you can see why they dropped that word. And then I learnt that it was illegal for lesbians to have an advertised public event in this country. Illegal for lesbians to hold a public event in this country unless they include males who identify as lesbians. So the fundamental right of lesbians to self-organise, to have meaningful language, has been lost because of the ideological straitjacket that has been pushed by the queer ideologues in this country. It's a new religion. Some people call it genderism, but it is very evangelistic, and they are pushing it on everyone and driving it through our institutions. I've lost my spot in my phone. So the right to self-organise and to have meaningful language is an essential right for everyone. It is essential for women to have the right to self-organise without the presence of men. It is essential for lesbians to be able to self-organise without the presence of men. We all understand that it is good that transgender people can self-organise, and they do. They have events for transgender people only. Nobody objects to that. My next shock was to discover the indifference of people who regard themselves as progressive to these shocking things that were happening. And, you know, as many of us have thought about this indifference and this lack of interest in what's happening to children who are most likely to grow up gay or lesbian or autistic or just girls, unhappy girl children who are being harmed by this current medical scandal. But I think it's not necessarily indifference. I think most people have doubts about this. I think most people have their feet on the ground. We know that biological sex exists. We know that it's important. And so I think there are large numbers of people who have doubts and they are just not voicing them. And part of it is the ideological enforcement through bullying, through all of the terrible tactics that have been used by the trans activist lobby, which has been evident here over the years, which is why there is a police presence here, because the tactics of these activists are so offensive and so bullying. So I want to thank the brave women who have organised this event over the last years, and the brave women who have organised the events in other parts of Australia. You are absolutely brilliant, and I think there is a trajectory for this. We saw it in the United States election. I don't think queer theory cannot survive contact with the general public. Once the general public know how bizarre this is and how offensive so many elements of it are, the public will not buy it. So in the US election, we saw that, from my point of view, as a lifelong lefty, we saw that the Democrats just walked into a complete trap with this stuff. And a significant number of people who would normally swing to the Democrats swung towards Trump because of the insane positions that the Democrats had adopted on some of these issues. So thank you everybody who has organised this, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.